This video is sponsored by Dragon Slayer's Credentialing and Consulting and Ask Fred.
Hey guys, it's Cyrus of Chaos, and I'm here today to discuss the outcome of the referee review form that I had created for the 2024-2025 season for Sabre and Foil. So here's a little info about what the forms are composed of and how they were set up and distributed. So I had 76 competitive World Cup fencers and coaches fill out the form for Sabre and 61 fill out the form for Foil, compared to last year where only 15 people filled out the Sabre form. So there was a lot more interest in the project this year. In all the forms, referees were reviewed on three metrics on a scale of one being the worst and five being the best. Those metrics were quality of calls, honesty of the referee, and temperament of the referee. Those three metrics were then averaged together to create a fourth metric for evaluation called overall score. Now, there was also an open response section to give any feedback that the user wanted, good or bad, to any referee in the forum. I encouraged people who didn't have any knowledge of a particular referee to skip that section for that referee in the forum. So while I was distributing this form, I did it first by sending it specifically to only high-level fencers and national coaches. By high level, I mean just literally 1 through 30 on the international points list. I just went down the list and just sent it with a copied pasted message to every fencer in that range. And then at a certain point, I started posting about it on my story, not including the link, so not just anyone could fill it out, but just saying that I had done this. At that point, when I did that, many Sabre referees reached out to ask if their names were on the list, and when I told them yes, they told me they were quite nervous about what the results would be and the fact that they were on that list. My answer to them, as always, is that as long as you're being honest and doing your best job for the fencers, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. In contrast, and I thought this was really interesting, when I made a post about the Sabre review and the foil referees reached out to ask if there was a foil referee form, and I told them that there wasn't, they actually encouraged me to make one because they were excited at the prospect of being reviewed. So the contrast between those two groups I thought was really interesting right off the bat. After I set up the foil form, a couple epee referees reached out and asked me to make an epee form as well, but it's so much work gathering not just photos of the referees, but making each section that at that point I just said I don't think it's worth doing that because there's a lot less subjectivity in epee. But I actually do wish that I had done an epee form, and I probably will next year because it's been really interesting evaluating the two groups next to each other, but I guess I'll just do that again next year. So the way that I picked the two groups of referees was for Sabre. I have a friend who keeps statistics throughout the season of Sabre bouts from most FIE competitions. She downloads the matches from, I think, with a script from each website and puts them into an Excel sheet. And I just asked her to send me a list of the 20 referees who did the most matches for men and women combined. And that's how I picked the Sabre one. Since the foil one was kind of sprung on me at the last second because the referees asked me to do it, I looked at who was in the most tournaments and who had refed the most finals and used a combination of that to pick 21 people. I picked 21 because there were two people who were tied in one of those metrics and I just grabbed them both up. So the the criteria that I used to pick the two is a little bit different, and it's because I was not expecting to do a foil review form, and I didn't have the same resource available for both of those to do the choosing, essentially. So, despite having refereed in both weapons this year, Mikhail Pagiev was reviewed only as a Sabre referee, not as a foil referee, because he was in the top 20 most numerous referees in Sabre and was not at the top of either of those metrics for foil. I think it would have actually been really interesting to see how two different groups evaluated the same person, but again, I kind of missed the boat on that one. So I mentioned I did this last year, so I also have the data from Sabre referees from the 2023 and 2024 form to compare the numbers to. So now that we've gotten that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the statistics. I asked my friend Jeff Spear, who is a scientific researcher and was a fencer on the national team for many years, to run some statistics on the data, and this is what he had to say. I compared foil and saber 2024 to 2025 and whether temperament and honesty predict quality. Here are some figures, and here is what I found. There is a significant difference between foil and saber in honesty, with a p-value of 0.002, and quality, with a p-value of 0.003, but not temperament, with a p-value of 0.12. And for anyone who is not familiar with statistics, a p-value of less than 0.05 is considered is considered statistically significant based on the fact that it's not based on chance. And in essentially that's how many times in 1,000 that you'd run a study like this and you'd get these results due to just pure chance. So in the case of temperament, you'd get this result out of pure chance about 12% of the time. And in the honesty and quality departments, you'd get this less than 0.2 and 0.3% of the time. So those results are pretty significant, which suggests that foil referees are seen as more honest and higher quality than saber referees. And the differences are pretty extreme. In honesty, the difference was zero point 0.6 points. In quality, it was 0.5 points. And in temperament, it was 0.3 points. There is also a significant relationship between quality on the one hand and honesty, with a p-value of 0.001, and temperament with a p-value of 0.001 as well across the data set. There are a lot of possible directional explanations for this, so I won't go into them. These correlations are weak, but that weakness is in large part due to Malenchev, who seems to be the one consistent exception. And here's my little addendum to that. In both the 2024 and 2025 data sets, Malenchev ranked in the top five for Sabre referees in terms of quality, but in the bottom five in terms of both honesty and temperament, suggesting that people think that he is a very good referee who can ref well when he wants to, but chooses to play games and inject his personality more than just referee the actual matches. Addendum over. The difference between Sabre referees across years is not significant for quality, with a p-value of 0.85, not at all significant, or honesty, with a p-value of 0.07, which is close to being significant, but there is for temperament, with a p-value of 0.048. The differences are very small, with the average difference being about 0.2 points for honesty and temperament. Average quality is actually very slightly lower across the 2 years, 0.02 points, but median quality is slightly lower, 0.05 points lower. That was what Jeff Spear had to say about this. My friend Oli Droege looked at the data and had this to say. In Sabre, you have a much broader range. The good referees are similar to foil, but there are a lot more poorly rated referees. That basically means, drastically spoken, Sabre refereeing feels more like a lottery. You need luck to have a decent ref, while foil is more consistent. You're very likely to have at least a decent one and can probably focus more on your actual bout than you can in Sabre. I think that this could be because of the nature of the weapon being harder to actually correctly decide saber points. This could explain the vast amount of low ratings in general and the lower quality. These are really good and interesting points. And me personally, I think that this is an excellent point and helps explain why the behavior of saber ref fencers seems to be getting worse on average. With the margins of what is attack counterattack versus attack and preparation and which person started first and gets the reprise being so incredibly small and getting smaller each season, and with half of the referees having received scathing reviews, it seems like the general sentiment is that everyone feels like they're being treated unfairly all the time. So whether you win or lose, like even when you win, you're not particularly happy about the refereeing. When you lose, you feel like you got screwed. This happens over and over again, and when it happens all the time, it makes it harder for people to accept their losses, especially when this is what they're doing for a living. I believe strongly that the FIE needs to take steps to restore faith in Sabre referees, or this problem is only going to get worse. And whether that's by continuing to punish referees who are doing substandard jobs, like what we saw in Wuxi, confirmed by the
First
referee
attack is
review form
no.
that I
The
had
first attack
of
is
the
no
Greek
from the
referee,
left. I change.
or just by releasing something clarifying the calls that they're making. That's up
Oh,
to them,
that
but
was
they need to do something because
the piece.
athletes and coaches, simply put, just don't trust Sabre referees right now. Another one of my friends, Phil Matsakh,
Okay,
had the
so
idea to look at the
it's not
scores
anything that we
of
call. The
each
attack was
region,
no.
which I
The
thought was a
attack
very
was
interesting
no, and then
idea,
he
and I
says
had not
pound
considered
look
doing
for the
that. What we see from this is that referees from the American region have the lowest average scores in terms of quality, but the Eastern European region has the lowest average scores in terms of honesty and temperament, giving them the lowest overall score. Interestingly, every single referee that was reviewed both last year and this year had lower scores this year in almost every category. Ideally, you would see these numbers going up each year, but since I only have 1 year to make this comparison and only one data point does not create a pattern, it's not anything conclusive, but it is certainly worrying that the perception was more negative this year than last year, basically across the board. And finally, I had also created a data set for coaches and fencers to review the Sabre refs at Junior and Cadet World Championships this year because that's what I did last year. But I did not include them in the statistical calculations because it seemed like comparing the results of the one competition to reviews of refs for the whole season would not create an accurate comparison. So I left that one out, but you can find the link to that form as well as all the other forms I referenced in the video information section. There's also an overall link where you can look at the scores of the foil and the saber referees compared against each other. There's another tab on that that has foil, saber, and saber from 2024, so you can review them all next to each other. And I've set up tabs so that you can sort by any of these metrics to really see what the difference is. But looking at things like temperament, if you look at the foil and the saber referee groups, you'll see that like the bottom 10 between both groups, 9 of those people are Sabre referees. So we really need to get this together if we are going to create a sport that is going to be more mainstream. Because simply put, you can't have a sport like that if the athletes and the coaches don't trust the referees. I'd also really like to congratulate the two people who just did the best in general. Pavel Salar from Slovakia in foil was rated the highest overall referee in foil and just barely edging out Florence Ducama. I'm sorry if I'm saying those names wrong. And Tom Muller got the best overall score, not only in saber but between the two weapons. So those people especially should be congratulated. But there were a lot of people who are doing really, really good work. Those people are recognized as being trustworthy, high quality, honest referees by their peers. And there are definitely quite a few people on this list that should look at the feedback that they're getting and consider changing some of their behavior if that is indeed something they care about. But I've been talking enough. I encourage you to go look at the forms that I've linked in the video description and give me your opinion on them. I am very interested to see what you guys think. And please leave those comments on the video so that we can have a healthy discussion. But if there's anything that you think I missed, or if there's anything that you think that I should include next year based on the results this year, please let me know. And I'm really looking forward to next year when I have a couple of data points for Sabre to compare it to, and next year I'll be doing epee as well so that we can compare all the weapons together. Anyway, thanks guys, and thanks especially to anybody who filled out this form and helped me distribute it. See you in the next one.